For centuries, human thought has leaned on binaries, pairs of opposites that seem to explain the fundamental nature of reality. Cause and effect, light and shadow, positive and negative. These dualities have served as the bedrock of logic and reasoning. Yet the world we observe is rarely so simple. Systems in nature, society, and even our own minds exhibit a depth of complexity that cannot be reduced to a single line of influence. Instead, they revolve around dynamic cycles where more than two forces interact in a dance of mutual influence. This is where triadic thinking comes into play. By stepping beyond binary logic, triadic logic offers a lens for understanding systems where three elements interact to shape a larger whole. In these systems, no single element acts alone, and no pair functions in isolation. Instead, the interaction of three interconnected forces creates patterns, stable and emergent, that reveal the true nature of the relationships within. Triadic thinking doesn't just offer a method for observing complexity, it provides a structured framework for understanding how three forces achieve positive balance or hold themselves in negative equilibrium. What follows is an introduction to this framework, laying the groundwork for how triadic logic illuminates the patterns underlying the interconnected world. Triadic thinking invites you to examine systems of three mutually influencing elements, where each element interacts dynamically with the others. While binary logic deals with pairs of cause and effect, triadic logic is better suited for systems that behave cyclically, with one element affecting the second affecting the third, and the third circling back to the first. This cyclical nature makes triadic logic powerful for understanding complex, interconnected systems that cannot be reduced to simple linear chains. In this framework, you consider three elements, A, B, and C, that each have a state. They may be active or inactive, engaged or disengaged, true or false. What makes triadic logic unique is how it formalizes the relationships between these states. If A is active, it might compel B to activate, while B's state could in turn influence C, and C might feed back to affect A. These rules of interaction aren't isolated. Instead, they form a network of interdependencies that creates balance, instability, or feedback loops depending on the situation. The interplay among these three elements results in recognizable patterns of interaction. For instance, two elements might reinforce each other and pull the third into alignment, creating a harmonious and self-reinforcing system. In another pattern, the negativity of one element might cascade through the others, dragging the system into collapse. These patterns are consistent and predictable because the logic governing them is internally coherent. When you follow the relationships from one element to the next, you arrive at a stable state that reflects the system's inherent dynamics. You might wonder why triadic logic focuses on three elements instead of pairs or larger groups. The answer lies in the unique role a third element plays. In a pair, relationships are linear and often oppositional. One element drives the other, with little room for nuance. When you introduce a third element, the system becomes multidimensional. The third element can mediate, amplify, or constrain the relationship between the first two, creating a dynamic interplay that is far more representative of real-world systems. This triadic structure captures the essence of feedback, synergy, and adaptation, making it applicable across fields as diverse as physics, psychology, and artificial intelligence. As you explore triadic logic, you'll encounter specific patterns that define how three elements interact. These patterns go beyond binary on-off states and reveal the many ways that elements can influence one another. Some patterns lead to equilibrium, where the elements stabilize in mutual support. Others lead to breakdown, where negative influences propagate through the triad and destabilize the system. Still others describe more complex dynamics like feedback loops or emergent harmonies. The beauty of triadic logic is that these patterns are not arbitrary. They are self-consistent, meaning that the rules governing the interactions ensure coherence. If a pattern states that A implies B, B implies C, and C implies A, then the relationship will hold true through the entire system. This self-consistency allows triadic logic to predict how systems evolve, whether they settle into balance or spin out of control. The practical applications of triadic logic are as wide-ranging as its conceptual foundation. You might use it to analyze the dynamics of a team where the success of one member feeds into the motivation of another, while a third mediates the overall direction. Or you might apply it to artificial intelligence, where syntax, semantics, and logic interact to create understanding. In the natural sciences, triadic logic can describe the interactions among physical forces or ecological systems, revealing the underlying patterns that sustain or destabilize them. At its core, triadic logic offers a way to see and interpret the cycles of influence that define our world. It moves beyond simple cause and effect to capture the richness of interconnected relationships. As you explore the specific triadic patterns, you'll begin to see them in daily life, in systems large and small, and even in your own thoughts and actions. This perspective is not just a tool for analysis, it's a way of understanding the world as it truly is: interconnected, cyclical, and profoundly triadic. That's what makes this framework more than a thought experiment. It serves as a practical tool for predicting and steering the ways three connected elements might support, impede, or modify one another. Once you appreciate why the triad matters, how each state exerts its push or pull, and how the corresponding patterns govern those interactions, you'll see the deeper significance. Each triadic pattern is like a window onto the fundamental rhythms of cooperation, conflict, and transformation that underlie so many parts of life. And as you grow more familiar with these cyclical flows of influence, you'll recognize them all around you, from the smallest interpersonal friction to the largest scale systems, equipped with a new way of guiding or understanding them through a triadic lens.